Are you new to modern board gaming, or do you have some friends who are really deep in the hobby and you're just not really sure whether you should take the plunge or not, but you're really excited to do so? Well, you've come to the right place, my friends, because today we're going to talk about some of the things that I wish I knew before I stepped into this hobby for the first time, and we're going to take a trip down memory lane. Hi, my name's Danny. I'm an avid modern board gamer from Australia that loves sharing my passion for this hobby with you, my friends, and my family. Let's begin this journey. Cheers! Hello, Danny. I'm you from the future. Are you me? Or am I me you? Don't worry about how I got here. Just know that what I'm gonna tell you is gonna change your life. Wait, what are you doing? In the future, you're not gonna play this, or this. Oh, these games? Nah, they won't exist. You're gonna sell this, you're gonna get a 3rd edition of Terraforming Mars. They'll all come in a digital form that you'll play on your phone, which will fit in the palm of your hand. These will become vintage, and you'll probably find that they'll sell really well on the local board game geek market. That's right, board games come obsolete. I love cardboard. Danny, it is time that I must leave you. Remember, don't get stuck in the past. Always look to the future. The future is bright. Oh man, that future sounds horrible. I'm gonna buy every single board game now. It's never leaving my collection. I'm gonna play every single one of them. The first thing that I wish I knew before entering this hobby is simply just how much space board games actually take up. Now, if you're someone that lives in an apartment or a unit or even in a rental, having enough space to store these giant board game boxes is actually its own spatial puzzle challenge. The idea that, and I think there are some people that have actually gamified the idea of stacking games as well, but the idea of storing these big giant boxes in your lounge room or in your garage is actually quite a difficult thing to navigate, because you really want to keep these games safe, and putting them in a place like a garage means that mold can grow. And I know I've actually got a friend who had his board game kind of set up in his basement, and unfortunately there was some mold that kind of grew, and I think it did luckily not damage too many board games. But that's something that you have to really consider, is having a place to store these games is really important. And these Kallax shelves, whilst they're quite appealing and the right size for these board games, they are quite thick. And I've even seen certain board games, especially deluxe edition games, which actually take an entire Kallax cube, and that's just the one game. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I first entered this hobby was buying a board game before actually trying the game out. I would hear about a game, I would then go, oh my goodness, that game sounds amazing. I'd go out, spend my, $100, get the game home, unpack it, and realize, oh, I'm not really sure I was keen on this game. Oh, the rules are a little bit heavier and drier than I thought, and this did happen to me quite a few times on my first few purchases. And thinking back, I thought, ooh, why did I get that game? Just because it was ranked number 1, 2, or 3 on the top board game geek list didn't really mean it was a correct fit for me. The one game that really stuck out to me as one that I kind of regretted getting was Twilight Struggle. At the time when I entered the hobby, Twilight Struggle was the number 1 board game. Not only was it a 2-player game, but it actually had some really great reviews. And as a naive gamer who was entering the hobby for the first time and not having played many gateway games, I spent about 3 days reading the rulebook and then working it out with my partner, time to play, space to set it up. And even just the historical theme just didn't really appeal to me at the time. I think I liked the complexity and the sound of the action cards, but it was actually well and truly so overwhelming. In fact, that could have been the game that really diverted me away from the hobby. But then there were other games that appeared on my radar that really swung me back the other way. I wasn't actually really sure what sort of games I actually liked, because simply I didn't know what types of games there were. If you're getting into board gaming for the first time, one thing I strongly recommend is having a super strict budget. That means looking at how much you can afford and the cost of a game and whether you actually have time in the month to play it. I like to go on a month by monthly basis. So I might allocate myself $100 or $200 a month, which kind of equates to about 2 big ticket to ride size games that I can buy. And then I kind of try and commit to that as much as possible. Overspending is something that I've unfortunately fallen into many traps with, and I know that I'll buy a game just simply because I just want to have the game and own the game. And I think having a strong, strict budget means that the choice of games becomes more important. Which one you choose to buy this month is one that you actually really want to play, and one that you definitely will see will get played in your playgroup or at the table. And you know, I think money is something that should be enjoyed when you earn it and you spend it, and if it makes you happy, great, and it makes me happy when I buy a lot of games. But yeah, if you got other commitments and other financial responsibilities, it's also important to be really smart about how you spend your money too. One of the biggest things I really wish I knew and probably wanted more help with when I first entered the hobby was navigating BoardGameGeek.com. Back then when I first started this hobby, Board Game Geek was simply a page with lots of different links and texts. There weren't many pictures, and it basically looked like an online spreadsheet, and you literally had to sift through rows and rows of links to find what you need. I know it was all sectioned off in like, here are the blogs, here are the game reviews, here are the latest upload pictures, but trying to find everything was incredibly difficult. And then signing up as a user, and then being able to upload your own video links or even your own pictures, just navigating how all the kind of HTML coding worked was actually a whole nother learning arc that I really didn't expect. I think the website has improved dramatically. It's actually really visually well laid out now. I love all the different sections, and I love how it does suggest to you the latest news and the hotness. If I could meet myself 7 years ago as I entered this hobby as I am right now, I'd probably say to myself, you know what? You don't need the expansions. Basically, back then, when I got super excited about getting my first ever modern board game, I'd look at the game, I'd then look online and see what expansions it had, and then I would make an effort to buy the base game and the expansions before ever playing the base game. And I think that was probably a misstep on my part, mainly because it's like, well, it was more driven not about wanting to play the game, but the actual fear of missing out on these extra cool bonus parts of the game that I thought that I would enjoy. And then it turned out 2, 3, 4 years later, I still haven't played those expansions, or I may have gotten them out once and not really had another chance to play them again, and I just sometimes prefer just playing the base game. And one example is Settlers of Catan. When I got Settlers of Catan, I was like, you know what? I want the Seafarers expansion and the Cities and Knights expansion. And then I even remember the experience of going to the game shop and the guy at the store saying, oh, if you want to get into modern board games, just buy the base game first, see if you like it, and then get the expansions. Did I listen to that guy's advice? No. That day, I left the store with both the base game and the 2 expansions, and still to this day, I think I've sold the Seafarers expansion. I still have the Cities and Knights expansion. Played that probably only like once or twice. Actually, City and Knights expansion is actually really good, but finding people that want to play the expansion, that's a whole nother story arc. The next thing I would like to share is something that I'm a little bit embarrassed by. I like to describe myself as a little bit of a sponge. That's because I absorb everything that I see, everything that I do. I just absorb it with so much passion and love. And sometimes I forget how much of an effect that has on my friends and family, and in particular my hubby. Because I'm so in love with board games and the environment, sometimes I can just really go way too deep into board gaming and pull my hubby in, or pull my parents in, or pull my brother in and my friends to play board games. And sometimes that can be too overwhelming for them. You know, if your passion for something can really pull other people in, is also a good thing, but also a not so good thing. And the good thing is, you know, it's something that you love, it's something that you want to share, it's something that you want to present to yourself, but that can sometimes overshadow things that the other people in your life love. And so it's really important, I think, for me to strike a good balance of sharing my hobby with my partner, but then also taking the time to appreciate things that my partner loves. My partner loves, building rockets on computers or playing City Skylines and Minecraft. And you know what? That's something I should take a lot more time and consider doing with my partner. And that way, my partner feels like it's not just always all about board gaming. And whilst board gaming is something that he loves doing, I also need to make sure that I have time to invest in spending time doing the things that my family and friends love too. If you have other people in your life that just is as equally as into board gaming as you, then yeah, amazing. And I'm always looking for people that are at that deep level that just love board gaming. And yeah, it's important to know that not everyone is at the same level of depth in the hobby as yourself. Just Board Game Geek is a treasure trove of resources. Board game players and designers and publishers are such creative people. Yes, a game may have been released with a certain set of rules which are meant to play a certain way, but if you actually head to the variant or the file section of a particular board game, you can actually find different versions of the game that you can try. Maybe it's a solo version that you want to play, or maybe there's a rule that kind of feels unbalanced and someone has suggested a different way to play the game. The beauty of all these different variants that people have created online means that you can get different value out of the game, different ways to play, different ways to enjoy it. And sometimes I've bought a game and I thought, oh dear, I don't like this bit or this bit of a game. I might come up with my own house rule variant to play the game. But actually, when I then looked on the Board Game Geek page, there are other people who already had the same experiences and found ways to kind of get around some of those balance issues. One thing I wish I'd known is when to buy a game at the right time. And this one is a tricky one because we can't really see into the future. We can't really go back and change things that we did in the past. But I've often had games that I've seen available in physical nature at a store and thought, oh, I'll buy that later. And then only to realize years later on down the track, I'm like, oh my goodness, I really want that game. Now I can't find it anywhere. Now it's like $300 online or on eBay. Or now I have to wait for the game to have a reprint in order to be able to enjoy it. But it's not the version of the game that I really wanted because the reprint has all brand new art and all new components. Yokohama was the game that kind of did this for me. And there was even like a Kickstarter with a deluxeified version of the game. And now the publisher is not around, so getting that deluxeified version is really hard. But 5 years ago or whatever, I saw the game everywhere and now I cannot find the game anywhere. Discovering rare games is something that you have to be mindful of because there are games that might seem plentiful now, but then after that, the print runs over, the board game publisher has moved on. Finding some of those games can be really tough. Even like the first edition of Iki, which basically I think online goes for about $200 US, I think, when I last looked. But that's a version of a game that I would really love to own. It's like kind of like a treasured game. I've got the second edition by Sorry We Are French, but I just really want to play the original again, and one of my friends actually has it. Games that are hard to find will usually get reprinted in the future at some point. I think Q-Birds was one of them. It was one of those games where it's like, I couldn't find it for ages, but now Pandasaurus Games has reprinted it. Now it is available. Or there'll always be like a newer or deluxeified version of the game because a lot of publishers are now going back into their catalog and bringing back older games to life in a new and vibrant way. The other thing I wish I knew is to understand the power of persuasion and the power of suggestion. I didn't realize how powerful it was when someone simply just said the line, that game was excellent. Oh, that game was not what I expected. That game really actually surprised me. Comments like that absolutely hook me in. I'm like, oh, if that's the way I think about the game, what did they see that I didn't see in the game? And I think the power of persuasion is something that you can't really oversee because the subconscious psychological part of those sorts of comments really drives the motivating factor for getting a game, buying into the hype, falling into traps of just spending lots of money on a Kickstarter without actually having played the game or thoroughly researched the game, just simply because of that fear of missing out. And the power of suggestion is actually incredible. In fact, sometimes I say to myself, okay, I'm going to the city, I'm gonna not go to the board game store today because I know if I go to the board game store, just browsing the board game store is going to persuade me to leave with at least 1 or 2 games. I feel like if I don't see the games and the game isn't in front of me, then that power of persuasion to buy another game that I'm not gonna play for like a month or so, or maybe longer, is not gonna be there. The same thing goes for like browsing board game websites, and this is something that I do, and I don't know if anyone else does this, but I actually have multiple browsers open with all of my favorite board game websites that I know and really love, and then I kind of have it filtered on newest to oldest, and then every day I kind of open each of the tabs just to see if new games have arrived. And if there's one that really piques my interest, I'll then hit the buy. And I think to myself sometimes, you know, if I just didn't have the browsers open, if I just didn't have the tabs open, if I just closed them all for a while, maybe I wouldn't spend like, you know, multiple amounts of dollars on games that, you know, I may or may not need. I mean, it does give me great satisfaction, the experience of browsing and then purchasing a game, but, you know, I think, is it all necessary? And will I actually get the same value out of each of those games? I mean, I do enjoy them, and I do enjoy the process, and I enjoy getting them and researching and playing them. And when I do get to play a lot of these games, they're amazing. It's almost innate. So if you've got some stories or experiences to share about the power of suggestion and persuasion, please let me know in the comment section below. Am I alone in feeling like this? But now, we always have the benefit of hindsight, and I think a lot of us probably wouldn't change the way we entered into this hobby, because that's probably what makes this hobby such an interesting one. Our journey through navigating all the highs and lows. I think I probably wouldn't change anything at all, just because I guess it makes me who I am today, and it's just really nice to kind of reflect on those moments earlier on. Now, if you found this video super helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. And if you really like my channel, please consider heading over to my Patreon page and checking out some of the Patreon exclusive content over there, as well as having your say over the direction of future videos that appear on this channel. This is Danny signing out. I hope your next board game experience is an amazing one.